to speak to Chris McGee now. She was a commercial pilot for more than 20 years, still flies commercially and also private aircrafts as well. Chris, really good of you to join us here on the UK Tonight, because this story has really captured the public's imagination, because many of us know what it's like to get on a flight and experience turbulence. We're calling this extreme turbulence. Perhaps you can explain to us exactly what it is those passengers went through.
Well, extreme turbulence is the exact description for it. We categorise turbulence in several little blocks. There's mild, there's moderate, there's severe, and this is extreme. Basically, what they were experiencing, in my belief, is it's called CAT, clear air turbulence. And it's a form of turbulence that is very difficult, almost in fact impossible to predict. There's nothing on the flight deck that can give us an immediate indication that it's coming, aside from reports from other pilots or air traffic control itself. It literally does come out of the blue.
Well, that explains why so many passengers were injured, in terms of, it sounds like people couldn't get their seatbelts on quick enough. It doesn't even sound like there was a warning, perhaps, from the pilot. Just how rare is this?
Turbulence itself is not actually that rare, but to experiencing something of this degree is phenomenally rare. In my entire career, I think I've had one incident that I would describe as severe, not extreme, and there is certainly in my colleagues. Overall, I think I've heard maybe 2, possibly 3 incidents of something that extreme. Overall, it is really, really rare. It's an incredibly rare occurrence.
Just listening to some of the details that have been coming out today, it said that this plane dropped 6,000 feet in under 5 minutes, which sounds utterly terrifying. As a pilot, what did you think when you heard that?
Well, actually, although it sounds bizarre, that rate of descent is actually quite normal if the pilot sets it up 1,000 feet a minute. That's fairly normal when we're instigating a controlled descent. Obviously, what they would have experienced, and clearly from the reports this is what they did experience, was not a nice, smooth, controlled descent, but an absolute maelstrom of the airplane flinging itself around all over the sky. And it is awful what happened to the people on board. Obviously, one death is tragic, all the people who got injured, but it is incredibly rare.
Yeah, it's worth reassuring people, isn't it? Because people will look at that and perhaps feel nervous if they're flying anytime soon. It's worth talking to people about turbulence and what the pilot in control of that plane will have been experiencing, because it came with no warning. But, you know, pilots are extremely experienced. If they perhaps haven't experienced this before, they'll know what to do if it does occur.
Yes, that's correct. We do train in the simulator every 6 months at least, where we experience things that we can't practice in the real aeroplane. Things like emergency procedures, abnormals, and unusual weather conditions like this, for example. So we are taught how to fly the airplane through these extreme events and how to recover them should the airplane depart from its normal flight mode, which is what obviously it did today. So we do train on that. And it is also worth emphasising that the flight crew and the cabin crew do always strongly advise passengers, please, we suggest you keep your seatbelts loosely fastened at all times. And on the flight deck, that's what we do, and the reason we do it. That was what was experienced today. If you do have your seatbelt off, but sometimes we just do not have the chance to warn you, so you can return to a seat, safely buckle yourself in before the adverse conditions occur. So our advice would always be, just keep that belt on lightly fastened, and it will protect you.
Chris, we were just seeing pictures of the plane there, and, you know, I'm no plane spotter. I can't really tell the difference between the two of them, but that looks like your fairly standard commercial flight that would fly from London to Singapore. You also fly privately, so smaller planes. What would have happened if this was a smaller plane? Could this have been even more serious?
Well, actually, the aircraft that I fly are around about the same size as a small airliner. We're certified to the same standards. We have the same kind of performance, range, things like that. So they're not as big as a 777, but they're like the size of a 319. It probably would have been approximately the same, because obviously smaller aircraft weigh slightly less. So they're a little bit more agile in the air, but by the same token, a larger aircraft like this will have a lot more mass behind it. So generally speaking, it holds its place in the airspace a little better. It's going to, when you encounter something as rare as this, it's going to be unpleasant no matter what size of airplane you're in.
Yeah. Chris, I think it's just worth ending on, it's important to point out just how rare this is. You say you've only experienced severe turbulence twice in your 35-year career, but just a word of comfort for people who turbulence can be disconcerting, no matter how frequent a flyer you are. But it's worth just reminding people, that turbulence is not going to be dangerous to your flight.
This was an unprecedented circumstance to have that many people. Obviously, you're looking at a large airplane, so the percentage, you're going to get more people than if it was a small airplane who potentially could be injured. But it is very, very rare for that to happen. The aircraft itself suffered no damage whatsoever, to the best of our knowledge. The landing was made as a precautionary landing because obviously the captain was aware he had medical problems on board. He wanted to get those people seen to as soon as possible. But the aircraft itself, the airframe, we don't believe experienced any damage whatsoever. These things are way, way overbuilt. And as a comfort maybe to the people who are listening and not exactly feeling happy about what they've seen today, think back to the last time you ever heard about anything like this. You probably won't have done in your entire life before this one.
Indeed, Chris, a good note to end on. Chris McGee, commercial pilot for over 20 years. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Really appreciate it.